The year was 1964. It was known as Freedom Summer, and a massive 3-month initiative to register Southern black voters was underway by galvanized civil rights groups. These ethically and morally outraged American citizens and civil rights organizations coalesced around a central inertia and became the greatest civic activation in the history of America. This voter registration effort was in direct response to the Klan's own murderous campaign of fear and intimidation toward Southern blacks at the polls. The Klan, in Mississippi, in particular, had been targeting black activists, a fact that local activist and black freedom fighter James Earl Chaney knew all too well. But that night, the Klan had set their sights on a 24-year-old white New Yorker named Michael Schwerner, whom they saw as an outside agitator. Schwerner had been a particularly public white face in the Black-led movement, active in organizing voter registration campaigns and local boycotts of racist businesses. Then, on June 16th, acting on a tip, a determined mob of armed KKK members descended upon a meeting at Mount Zion Methodist Church of Neshoba County, Mississippi, looking for Schwerner. Schwerner wasn't there, but many black churchgoers, activists, and locals were, and they were brutally beaten and had the place of worship they built with their own hands burned to the ground. The Klan missed its target that night, but they had already set their ultimate trap. It was June 20th when Schwerner and two fellow volunteers, the aforementioned black freedom fighter James Chaney with Andrew Goodman, headed south to investigate the fire. After arriving, they set about the business of interviewing witnesses, tending to the victims, and convening with local activists. What follows next is a brief chronology of the events beginning in 1964 that would go on to stun the nation. At 5 p.m., Sunday, June 21st, after driving into Philadelphia, Mississippi, the three civil rights workers were arrested by Cecil Price, Neshoba County Deputy Sheriff, for the alleged crime of speeding. At 10:30 p.m. that same night, Chaney, Goodman, and Schwerner were released and aimed their blue station wagon in the direction of the town of Meridian, 40 miles away, but the KKK members followed. Neither Chaney, Goodman, nor Schwerner were ever heard from again. Early morning, June 22nd, the Department of Justice, acting on a tip, requested the involvement of the FBI. A few hours later, attorney Robert Kennedy implored the Bureau to take up the case, and by late morning, the area was blanketed with agents who began intensive interviews. Late afternoon, June 23rd, intelligence information led to the remains of the burnt-out blue station wagon, but no bodies were found. The worst was feared. The charred station wagon led to the naming of the case, MIBURN, short for Mississippi Burning. June 24th to August 3rd, a massive search for the young men, aided by the National Guard, through back roads, swamps, and hollows commenced. At the same time, known members and developing informants were pressured or engaged by the Bureau. At the request of President Lyndon Johnson, a new field office in Jackson, Mississippi opened, and a comprehensive analysis of the local KKK and its role in the disappearance was crafted. August 4th, a tip led investigators to an earthen dam on Old Jolly Farm, where their bodies were eventually found buried 15 feet down. December 4th, more than a dozen suspects, including Deputy Cecil Price and his boss, Sheriff Lawrence Rainey, were indicted and arrested, but not for murder, as the state of Mississippi refused to prosecute. It was this prejudicial failure that led the U.S. Department of Justice to pursue federal civil rights charges. But in 1965, a federal district judge named William Harold Cox dismissed the indictments by ruling that the federal government did not have the authority to prosecute private individuals under the civil rights statutes being cited in the case. The federal government appealed, and then, in 1966, the United States Supreme Court reversed the decision in United States v. Price, stating that private individuals could be prosecuted when they conspire with state officials to violate a person's civil rights. And on October 20th, 1967. Following years of court battles, 7 of the 18 defendants were found guilty, including Deputy Sheriff Price, but not a single solitary one on murder charges. One major conspirator, Edgar Ray Killen, even went free after a lone juror couldn't bring her delicate little self to convict a Baptist preacher.
Though it should be noted that in 2005, a documentary made by a teacher and 3 students brought forward new evidence, and pressure at the state level at that time finally had state authorities charge the preacher with 3 counts of manslaughter, for which he was convicted at the age of 80 and sentenced to 3 consecutive terms of 20 years. He appealed, but the Supreme Court of Mississippi rejected the appeal in 2007. So it only took 40 fucking years. But just to give credit to those who did eventually take action.
Indeed. It should be noted that the above history lesson is a necessary one for today's film, as the film takes many liberties in the telling of a very true and very real story of a dark and all too common chapter in American history. A story that in 1985, when this film was being shopped around, very few people actually knew of. So grab some wine, put away the distractions as we discuss Mississippi Burning, and pair wines with this dramatic rendition of a horrible fucking chapter in American history.
And while you're grabbing that wine, and we're all going to need some wine, we still have to give you the proper intro to this podcast. So here that is, total tonal shift, but let's give you the intro, and then we'll be right back.
Are you not entertained?
Yes, sir! We'll have a real good time!
He's Dave, and I'm Dallas, and this is Ventertainment. We have opinions on just about everything. Sometimes those opinions are spot on. Sometimes they go down easier with a glass of wine. This is Ventertainment, the wine and entertainment pairing podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to Ventertainment. This is the podcast where we pair wine with entertainment. It's as simple as that. You don't need to understand wine. You just need to have fun with it. And the understanding will come with time. And our favorite way to have fun with it, try to consider what kind of wine matches the tone, style, and aesthetic of the movie, show, album, book, or comic that you want to enjoy, or vice versa. You have a wine on hand. Now, what kind of entertainment is going to match that style of wine? But wait, how exactly do you go about this? Don't worry, we're about to demonstrate. Just follow our leads, and you'll see how there's never just one pairing that makes sense. The universe of wine and entertainment is vast, my friends, and both take years of a creator's life to make, so we highly recommend getting out of your comfort zone and experiencing as much of both as time and health allow. Please consume both responsibly. Don't forget to get up off your ass and exercise, and also drink water. And many thanks to our sponsor, Curated Wine Shop. No idea where to begin finding a wine that pairs with your movie? That's okay. Almost literally no one does, but Curated is here to help. They accept every Ventertainment-inspired challenge and will curate the selection to match your palate. Just tell them what you're trying to pair with, your budget, your preferences, and they will show you the way. Curated is a boutique wine shop on La Brea Avenue, Mid-City, Los Angeles, founded and operated by peeps currently and previously part of the entertainment ecosystem. They carry an ever-changing, wide-ranging selection of small-lot artisanal wines, from the known and comforting to the completely unique, whether it's reds, whites, rosés, oranges, sparklings, dry wines, sweet wines, and everything in between. They pour a themed flight Wednesday through Sunday every single week, offer tiered membership, including a curated tier, of which I myself am a member. I've been a member since before we even started this podcast. This is where they curate 3 bottles every month to match your preferences, even when your preference, like mine, is to drink the weirdest frickin' things that fit within the monthly price point. Curated is also the place where we will soon be hosting live and in-person wine and movie nights, the first of which is being planned for March. Technically, the first was last October. We did it as a bit of an experiment. It was a hit. So our first this year is being planned for March. We plan to make it a night of short films by local LA filmmakers, each paired with a different wine. So if you're in the LA area, keep an eye out for that. And you can do so by heading to curated-wines.com. That's curated-wines.com, where you can browse all the upcoming events at the shop and also browse most of their wine selection. And while you're at it, you should also follow us on Substack, entertainmentstudios.com, where we'll keep y'all up to date on all of our upcoming events, as well as bonus wine and entertainment pairings, collabs with other writers, filmmakers, and wine peeps. Anyway, entertainmentstudios.com for us, and curated-wines.com for our sponsor, Curated Wine Shop. And now, before we get into it, our wine trivia question of the week. Dallas, let's see if you can get this right.
Okay.
Which United State was the first to have a black winemaker bottle his own wine from 1940 to 1970? Was it A, Virginia, B, North Carolina, C, Mississippi, or D, Illinois?
Okay, some clarification here, because I know of two people who fit the answer for this question well in one way or another, because I know the first person on record to actively black person on record in the States to actively make his own wine was from West Virginia, but it wasn't commercial. He was just a local sort of wine celebrity. And it
This
was
guy
also
released it
in
commercially
18
under his own brand.
Okay, that's the distinction you're looking for. Okay, yeah, this guy, the guy I was referencing, was
Yep.
also in the late 1800s.
Right.
But
No, this is as a business.
This is as a business.
At his own brand, his own company,
Okay,
and he grew the grapes. He owned the vineyard, and it was his own wine.
his name, I think they called him June or Junie. But I think his surname was Lewis or something like that. But the state was Virginia for sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
So John June Lewis Sr.,
John
aka
June, okay.
Junie. He returned from World War II. He had been in the European vineyards while he was over there. And while stationed in France, he tasted the earthy thrill of simple table wines, far from the stiff Bordeaux auctions dominating headlines. And in the late 1930s, Lewis received 193 acres deeded by Armistead Burwell. This was family land with tangled roots in slavery's aftermath. He took 10 of those acres in Clarksville, Virginia, and planted sturdy hybrid grapes. But on top of a decaying wine industry in Virginia, the lack of bank loans for black farmers meant Lewis would have to bootstrap the entire operation. He practiced hand tilling and grafting hardy varieties like Norton and Catawba, both suited to Virginia's humid clay soils. Yep. By 1940, Woburn Winery opened, America's first black-owned estate operation post-repeal of Prohibition. So Lewis vinified light reds for farm tables, sweet whites echoing his French epiphany. Lewis faced triple barriers, of course, the racial exclusion. No black members in wine trade groups were allowed at that time. There was financial drought because the USDA loans bypassed minorities almost entirely, and terroir doubt because this was Virginia. No one thought it was good terroir. His appellation's humidity bred rot, right? So yet his wines endured because he did hybrid grapes that were made for Virginia. So his wines praised for quote unquote rustic vigor that cut through fried chicken or ham hock better than any imported jug.
Okay,
And
I want to know
Lewis's
who
grapes
wrote that.
thrived where others failed.
I need to know who wrote that blip, because that is a little questionable, but go on.
It's a black lady named Beverly Crandon who wrote that.
All right, fine, I'll allow it. Go on.
And that was our wine trivia question of the week. Over to you, Dallas.
And now, let's cover the brief history of the film's development and production. In 1985, a young Chris Garolmo was sitting in his father's office when he grabbed a copy of the New York Post and fingered to a one-paged article. The article explored excerpts from a book called The Top Level Story of the FBI's Secrets and Scandals by Cartha D. Dickey DeLoach. The article was an installment in a series that examined the first person recount of agents who worked famous cases. This particular installment was about the Mississippi burning case from 2 decades prior. Garolmo was shocked to learn of President Johnson's acute fear that the conflagration down in Mississippi could set off a tide of racial unrest that could reshape American society. A fear that led him to grant Herbert Hoover carte blanche to solve the case by any means necessary. Garolmo was floored that this kind of power could be given to someone with as questionable a history as Hoover. Garolmo saw the inherent drama, tension, and political relevance to the moment and imagined a detective story where the good guys win, set against a huge sea change in the culture. He pitched the idea initially with no traction. It wasn't until Garolmo decided to write the script himself that people began to bite. Garolmo took his script to Frederick Zollo, with whom he had previously worked. The two would refine the script and begin shopping it, but they quickly realized that many studio executives were not familiar with the 1964 case or its significance and initially questioned its commercial appeal. Eventually, they got the script into the hands of Mike Medavoy. Now, a quick but related detour back a few years to 1979 in order to add context to the production of this film. In 1979, 3 executives at the highly profitable United Artists quit en masse after years of aggressive discord with their parent company, Transamerica. After resigning, it took just 3 days for their remaining 2 colleagues to resign as well. One of those colleagues was named Mike Medavoy. And within 2 months, the brand spanking new Orion Pictures hit the ground running with a $100 million line of credit and a Warner Brothers distribution deal. Within months, they'd signed major production deals with A-listers John Travolta, Barbra Streisand, and Francis Ford Coppola. It was this Mike Medavoy who received Garolmo's script, and with Medavoy's shepherding, Orion purchased it, agreeing to both develop and finance the project. Next came the hunt for a director, with Hollywood legends like Milos Forman and John Schlesinger being considered. But in 1987, September, in fact, Medavoy sent the script to the director of Bugsy Malone, Midnight Express, and Pink Floyd's The Wall, and that man's name, Alan Parker. With the backing of Orion and with Parker at the helm, Garolmo's script was in production. Well, almost. Seeking authenticity of the period, the production scouted some 300 locations, settling on towns in Mississippi and Alabama. Principal photography on Mississippi Burning began on March 7, 1988, and would eventually end ahead of schedule on May 14, 1988. One of the early shots filmed was the burning church scene, an important dramatic and symbolic moment, which required complex night shoots and multiple takes. Director Alan Parker chose to begin with several of the most technically demanding night sequences, including scenes involving cross burnings in the church fire, in order to take advantage of the lighting setup and scheduling logistics early in the shoot. The production was contentious, to say the least. Garolmo's script reportedly focused on political parable with more nuance in certain characterizations. The production was contentious, to say the least. Garolmo's original script reportedly focused on political parable with more nuance in certain characterizations, but director Parker came aboard and began significant rewrites which simplified the Southern white characters into broadly drawn antagonistic figures. Garolmo took issue with this, but director Parker defended his changes as necessary to tighten the narrative and heighten dramatic tension. With a production budget of $15 million, Mississippi Burning was released in December 1988 by Orion Pictures. It entered theaters as a prestige historical drama during awards season. Gene Hackman received critical praise, and the film was both a commercial success and a major awards contender, earning 7 Academy Award nominations and winning for Best Cinematography for Peter Bizyou. The film would pull in lifetime grosses of $40 million, making it a moderate commercial success for a serious R rated drama. Critics largely admired its intensity, performances, and visual style, though reviews were often qualified by concerns about its historical framing. The film would ultimately help establish Orion Pictures as the premier mini major studio of its day. Think maybe A24 for contemporary reference.
Or more pointedly, think Orion Pictures, which is still around and going strong. They recently released American Fiction with Jeffrey Wright, Bottoms, Nickel Boys, Hedda, and Sarah's Oil. So,
That's right.
funnily enough, they still have the same logo. They have not updated it since the 80s.
Legendary
It
logo.
is still that star that become, oh my God, but it's so weird because it looks so old
Yeah, it
school.
does.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
even the lion in MGM,
Yeah.
they became a CGI lion,
That's
right?
right.
Like they updated it. And I recently watched Oz Perkins'
Mm.
Gretel and Hansel, which is his version of Gretel. And it was just on Tubi. It was for free. And that Orion thing, and watching a what was that, like a 2019, 2020 movie.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you see, because it's one of those logos like the Shaw Brothers logos for Hong Kong movies, or the MGM, the old school MGM with the actual real life lion
That's
roaring
right.
and whatnot. It takes you immediately back to a certain
Mhm.
time period. But they still put it on all their modern movies. And I kind of love that. I kind of love that.
You know, it's gone through, I mean, so many sales. I think currently it's under Amazon MGM's banner. And that
Yeah, I
logo,
don't
like
even
you
fucking
said,
know. It's gone.
yeah,
It's been sold so many times.
yeah. It's currently a label, a label under Amazon and MGM. But you're right, that label, they kept that fucking label, and I'm glad they did, because they seem to be using Orion as kind of their little smaller prestige kind of indie, real
Hmm.
indie kind of banner.
It's
And
still what it's always been. It is still what it's always been, which is kind of awesome.
yeah, to be fair, yeah, I mean, they when they hit, they launched themselves as a proper as I guess technically, well, not technically the first, but a mini major. Reading the context of, where Orion came from with those five guys,
Hmm.
who sort of quit en masse, and then branched out and decided they were going to do this independent thing, which gave us so many fucking hits and great films and great sort of moments
Hmm.
of the 80s and
Hmm.
90s. And you're right, you're so right about
And then
that.
Mississippi Burning.
And then Mississippi Burning. And you're so right about that label. That label is so, it's a moment in time, and is this weird, like, nostalgic element that is just
And
so
it's the only one that
acute.
is still what it's always been, right?
Yeah,
Like the
yeah, yeah,
label
yeah.
itself, the fact they
Yeah,
have
yeah,
not, they could have given it new graphics,
yeah.
like it would be
Yeah,
roughly
yeah,
the same animation and label, but they
yeah,
would make it new with a
yeah.
new computer and
Nope,
whatnot. No, it's the same.
nope.
It looks gritty.
Yeah,
And like kind of like you can tell the resolution kind of is
yeah,
shitty, and
it's
you're like,
true.
wow, we've come so far. Seeing the old label, you can see why every other label has been updated, but not Orion. And God bless you, Orion. Keep it going.
Keep it going. I love seeing it. Every time I see it come up in the opening credits for something, it just takes me back to fucking 1985. It was so, I love that. It was my favorite label. I love that label. It just hit me right. And so, if you're out there, Orion, and you want to make some indie films, call your guy. I've got something for you. Anyway, uh, films may be elements of commerce, but they are also cultural documents. And as a cultural document, this film engaged both praise and even more critique as civil rights organizations of the day took issue with the film's perspective. The film quickly became a flashpoint in national conversations about race and representation. While it dramatized the 1964 murders of civil rights workers James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner, many activists and scholars criticized it for doing what Hollywood was built on, centering white characters in tales about very specific cultural moments. The film also presented FBI agents as the protagonist and minimized the agency of black organizers during Freedom Summer. The white savior, quote, narrative distorted the grassroots reality of the movement and also simplified the FBI's historical role. During the period of its release in the 1980s, Hollywood was increasingly revisiting civil rights history, but often through narratives focused on white moral awakening, yet again centering whiteness. And while Mississippi Burning revived public awareness of the 1964 case for a new generation, it also sparked sustained debate about who owns the stories of systemically oppressed populations, past, present, and future. Does cultural trauma need to be reframed through whiteness in order for the wider world to empathize? Consider that, or not, with wine if you have it.
One thing I wanted to add there
Yeah,
is one thing that was interesting about Mississippi Burning, and when I actually looked a little into like civil rights movies that followed in its wake, this seems to have been a little bit of a straw that broke a camel's back,
yeah,
at the very least, in
yeah.
terms of following this movie. You basically get the beginning of Spike Lee's career,
That's right.
where he started to do like Do the Right Thing
Mhm,
and Jungle Fever. And then we segue into the 90s where he does Malcolm X,
mhm,
which is possibly one of the first true civil rights era movies that gets tackled in the wake of Mississippi Burning. There was one more, The Long Walk, I want to say,
mhm.
or The Long Walk Home,
Uh
something
huh.
like that,
Uh
which
huh.
is, at least it was a black woman and a white woman that I haven't seen it, but to my knowledge, they're equally represented. Like they are the protagonists of, and they're kind of seeing like how does one white woman and one black woman deal with what's going on, and put them together to kind of see the differences between them. But from here, and then we go into the era where we have like Selma,
Mhm.
and it does seem like we get a little, like about a decade and a half to 2 decades where they I don't know if this was intentional or not, probably not, but black voices are starting to get the chance to actually tackle this versus the way Hollywood had been doing it up to that time. And now, to be fair, in the 2010s, we start to get the movies like Crash and Green Book and what was the other really bad one in the 2010s that is like
Oh gosh.
oh no,
Uh,
that are like, oh, why why are we tackling it this way again? There was one more that,
most of them.
I had in mind, and I'm already forgetting about it, but
Mm.
it was near around the same time as Green Book. And
Okay.
so you can see that we're starting to try to go back with that sort of like from a white POV narrative, a
Yes.
white savior narrative in terms, oh, the help,
Uh huh.
that's the one.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I feel like though the 90s was an interesting time where in the wake of Mississippi Burning, there seemed to have been a little more hesitancy. And the only people, maybe it was the only people who wanted to tackle it, were actually black voices at that point in time. But it does seem there was a lack of this type of approach to it for a short while.
Yeah. So, um, black artisans and filmmakers had been tackling that stuff in the shadows for black audiences for years. And so this film marks like one of the first times a proper Hollywood machine decided to tackle a story and attempt um, to sort of modernize the take. And of course, even with that, they're making the film for white audiences. So of course, it's the white gaze, it's the white POV, it's the sort of
Right.
the moral sort of
Yeah.
it's the moral narrative and transformation of the white character that's important. Um,
Mhm.
and so what ends up happening after Mississippi Burning is you get these kids who are now galvanized by things like hip hop, right? And rap music, which is
Mhm.
short form storytelling. That's all it is. But it's
Yeah.
this ability to kind of grab the mic, tell your own story for your own people in your own way.
Right.
And that, of
Right.
course, trickles into
Right. Take
film.
back the narrative.
Absolutely, 100%. And so at this time, the people who were in their 20s and the 60s now have children in their late teens or early 20s, some of them, right?
Hmm.
And so it's a new generation. And one thing that is so beautiful about black culture is uh I remember having a friend of mine who a white kid, and I'd written a script, and it was sort of just this litany of sort of data points of things that had happened in black history and American history and all this horrible stuff, and he knew none of it, right? This guy, great education, but he knew absolutely none of it. He was shocked to sort of read it, and I was like, well, no, this is the stuff we talk about amongst ourselves because one, we have to. It's it's the story. It's part of survival. It's part of all the stuff. So by the time someone
Right.
like Spike Lee comes along in the shadow of this film, there is a lot of annoyance with the Hollywood machinery of telling these
Mm-hmm.
stories in this way. And rather than telling the
Mm-hmm.
story about the woman, the black woman who was beaten and raped, we tell the story of the wife of the white man who raped her. And that's always seen as a slap in the face and culturally. And so when you get these audiences year after year who get these sort of who get this information from Hollywood, it does turn into this fire. And when the 90s come around, um, it's like it's just sort of off to the races with storytellers. We are able to
Mm-hmm.
then tell the stories the way we want to tell them, fictionalize them, dramatize them, tell the bare bones truth. And unfortunately, sometimes when you do partner with the Hollywood machinery, a lot of that gets cut away and edited away. So by the time we do get lots of these films in the 80s that do give voice to black realities of the 60s and 70s, or just black experience in general, even those have been
Mm-hmm.
crafted and cut away to sort of be as palatable as possible to white audiences. But I do agree, this is
Right.
sort of a marquee moment in Hollywood's
Right.
treatment or allowance of black voices to kind of
Mm-hmm.
make it to general audiences. Yeah.
And to your point of, whether it was intentional or not in Mississippi Burning, whether Alan Parker with his rewrites or Girolamo in his original screenplay, but Willem Dafoe's FBI agent, like he comes to the South and like he's clueless how it
Hmm.
works
Hmm.
and what the dangers are.
Hmm.
Right. Which is one of the things the movie, I think one of the good things the movie points out is like when white people come to help, they
Right.
don't even understand
Right.
who they're putting in danger or why,
Right.
because they're just so like, but this is procedure, this is how it go,
Hmm.
this is what we do, this is how we do it.
Right.
There's like, why would we do it any other way? We're here to help, but we can't be bothered to understand how to help in an authentic way, so we just bulldoze right in our normal way. And again, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that was one thing I did pick up on where I was like, that is kind of, we have white saviors, but they're white saviors who are largely inept at
Yeah.
being white saviors.
Yeah.
So they're
I think
which I did appreciate. Yeah.
I think a lot of the sort of white savior mentality is often about just showing up. It's like, well, my whiteness is here, and
Well, yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
aiming
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
and with right intention, but that's really all I
Hmm.
kind of understand. And I do
Right.
think,
Well,
in their
to be
defense,
fair,
when they
whether it's a, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
when they crafted
There's a
the
huge delay between us, Bud. So
I'm
sorry
hearing
about
that
this.
now for the first time, actually. Yeah. Um, but I will give them credit. I have lots of issues with the film, but also lots of things I loved from a filmmaking standpoint. But in terms of the writing and creating these two characters, which are not polar opposites, but different sides of the same coin. It was necessary to show that. It was necessary to show that white savior
Hmm.
who came in with this sort of by the book perspective and approach, and also have Gene Hackman's character, which is this sort of experienced Southern good old boy who understood that the way to get things done in this place, which has its own language, its own code of silence, its own code of
Hmm.
activity, was through nuance. And so showing those two
Right.
things, I give them lots of credit for that, because there's one scene, and I think they should have played it up more, where they're in the diner. We'll get to it, of course, or have we gotten to it? We'll get to it.
Yes.
Where he walks in and he just goes and sits in the black section. And that moment, which is so visceral and so interesting and so electric, where every black person in the room just sort of freezes, because they know the
Hmm.
FBI
All the
here
white
is
people
to
freeze
question.
too. Everyone
Freeze for different
freezes
reasons, but this is the important part. They
for
freeze
different
for
reasons. Right.
different,
Right. Right.
completely different reasons, and it's so clear in
Right.
that moment. And I think that's probably the most effective scene, literary scene of the entire film. Um, and I definitely give him a hand for that scene. So, but you're right. It is a great character in Defoe's turn there.
Yeah, I did want to say that, to the point of just showing up, that is kind of like whether you're talking about white people or let's say men when it comes to sexism or
Yeah,
whatever the group that is
yeah,
disenfranchised and lacks the power
yeah.
versus the group that has the power. To some degree, yes, showing up is what you're fucking asking of the group with power because they have the power. So you're like, would you please fucking show up to move this needle? Because that is a piece that is, it always takes. Like
It's the
in
first
some
piece.
way, it's the first piece, right? So to some degree, that's step one.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of like, yes, you have to show up. You have to get, the first step is we have to get past the point where it's like, well, this isn't our problem because
Hmm.
we're not even sure what you're talking about because we don't suffer this, we don't see it,
Right.
we're oblivious to it, we've got our blinders on. And step one is no, take the blinders off, see what's happening, give a shit about it, and please show up
Right.
because if you speak out about it, people care more, right?
It's true. It's true. All right.
All right, and on that note, let's get to this. We're going to start talking, take this movie act by act. We're going to break it into 3 acts and talk about what our wine pairing thoughts were at the end of each act. Go ahead, Dallas. Kick us in on act 1.
All right. All right. That's my Matthew McConaughey, by the way, guys. Uh, the film begins in 1964 as 3 civil rights workers, Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner, disappear on a dark rural road in Jessup County, Mississippi, after a black voter drive in the middle of what would be termed Freedom Summer. 2 FBI agents, Ward, played by Willem Dafoe, a by the book Northerner, and Anderson, played by Gene Hackman, an experienced Southern former sheriff, are given the job of investigating. And clearly out of place, the agents descend on the small southern town and begin poking around. But immediately encounter resistance from local law enforcement, particularly Sheriff Stuckey and his deputies, who are all tied to the Ku Klux Klan. After attempting to interview locals, they quickly realize the code of silence that blankets this town will not be easily breached, made very clear as Ward attempts to ask questions of a nervous black local in a diner scene. After a series of firebombings and violence against black locals, the son of a local preacher comes forward with information about a Klan firebombing. But once the case is brought against them, the local judge dismisses the seriousness of the crimes by suspending the sentences of the perpetrators. The judge also publicly admonishes the agents and terms them outside agitators. So, Dave, let's talk about this wine. What are you thinking here, my guy?
Mhm. So I also wanted to shout out to the very first literal scene, the very first picture
Yeah.
where we're ever shown in this
Yeah.
movie, which are the separated water fountains.
Yeah.
It's probably my whiteness shining through here, but I'd completely forgotten. I'm like, oh right, segregated fucking water
What?
fountains. I
Hold
forgot
up.
about those.
You forgot about that?
Mm-hmm.
Yikes.
Again,
Wow.
there's my blinders on, right? It's like this is not something I have to think about on a daily basis as part of, I mean, it is part of my people's
Absolutely.
history as well because I'm
Yeah.
American and that is like we're the ones who put that in. But it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, fuck, like, yeah. And this was not that long ago,
No.
right? That's the worst part of it. This is the 60s. It's
That's right.
not that long ago. It
Re-
was what, 14 years before I was born?
That's right.
So it's like, this is not crazy ancient history. Actually,
right.
we're pretty ancient. So maybe a little ancient, but not crazy ancient at
Yeah.
that point. But yeah, it was a good reminder and it sets the stage so perfectly because it is one of those ludicrous fucking things that were a part of that era, the segregated water fountains, where it's like, for fuck's sake, seriously.
That's such a curious or interesting delineation because for me, of course, that symbol, that image is it's just ubiquitous. It is a foundational
Mm-hmm.
image. It's sort of
Mm-hmm.
it is the bedrock of the last
Yes.
60 years. And the idea that um, someone who is well educated, well experienced, and well
Mm-hmm.
intentioned,
Mm-hmm.
can doesn't have
Not in
that sort of
denial of
not
any
in
of the
denial, not
past
denial,
either, right?
just doesn't necessarily have a connection to that is it's on one hand it's a cause for concern, not in you
Uh-huh.
specifically, but it's a
Well,
cause
but
for
no,
concern
but all of
culturally.
yes, but I'm part of
Right.
the group that it is a concern about.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it is
Um,
in the sense that, as we continue to progress, and of course, the issues that face us right now, like these specific issues, aren't about water fountains, right? So it's easy for me to just let that slip and
mm,
be like, that's not what we're debating. I mean, probably the closest thing to that right this very moment is maybe like trans bathroom rights and things like that, which is a very similar, like kind of sidestep of the same thing where it's like, well, we can't share the same this with those people type of a thing. But in terms of like where we are on systemic racism, like water fountains specifically are no longer the issue.
mm,
So it's easy for me to forget about them
yeah.
because they're not like certainly when I was a kid, oblivious,
Right.
oblivious that anything like this ever existed, like
Right.
not part of my anything. So I think it's also that it comes so much later in life to me, like as you become an adult and you
Hmm.
become more aware of your world and your environment and your history. And then you're like, oh, now, and for me, it's like, now here's all this new stuff
Right.
that you have to take in. Whereas for you, it's more foundational.
And it's amazing because the American sort of educational system has done a great job of making the civil rights moment in American history Black American history rather than American history.
Right.
And that's a problem
Hmm.
because you look at what's happening now in Florida and in other states where they are actively trying to remove any mention of things like those pictures, like that imagery, or
Right.
the set of events that happened in the 60s. So when I look at
Right.
you, someone in their 40s who doesn't necessarily have a connection to
Hey,
that
hey, hey,
imagery,
hey, hey,
sorry, 50s, uh, who doesn't necessarily have a connection to that really acute and so important benchmark imagery in American history. And then I think about the kids who would ostensibly be our children now or grandchildren even. Oh fuck, that hurt. um Coming up in a system that wants to even further uh, erode any mention of that moment in time and that discord because you know I don't know where do we go from there. Like if kids are in spaces where this information is actively kept from them, what do they know about
hmm
American history in that context? What do they
Right.
know
I think
about?
it's far more concerning with the online environment than actual formal education itself, because that's where they're learning most of what they're learning. It's
Yeah,
not even going to be in the schoolroom these days. They get so much information online. And that's where algorithms are in a
sure,
way segregating us. And it's like one
absolutely,
group gets one
absolutely.
stream of information, one
That's right.
version of history. It's why we have alternate facts right now.
That's right.
Is like here's one group of
That's right.
alternate facts and here's the other group that is might actually be based on something, but it's considered an alternate fact because it's
Right.
just a completely different
Right.
universe.
Right. And you're right. It's the idea that we go into a world now where, we're everyone's online, everyone has their curated vacuum and algorithm. What does become truth? What is truth? What is fact? What is
Mhm,
history? Whose perspective?
mhm,
And it's so easy to
right.
kind of tailor, if you control a person's algorithm. By the way, I have a great script coming up
Mhm,
on this concept, but the idea that you control a person's algorithm is a frightening concept that we are definitely kind of on the precipice of,
mhm.
where it just,
Can-
yeah.
I just wanted to say the one I think silver lining of AI
Mm,
is that AI scrapes from everything.
yeah.
And if people get used to asking AI questions, it's going to be a clusterfuck, and a lot of that information will be wrong, but it also won't be, I think, AI will actually be far less discerning than algorithms, right? It'll be far less like, this is what you want to hear, right? AI is going to be like, here's everything I found, bleh, and like shoot it out. And to some degree, that might actually be better than the algorithmic version of reality that we've been living through for the past 10 years.
But then the question is, who creates the parameters of return for the AI? Who holds that? Because it isn't
We'll
just
cross that river when we get there. Yeah.
yeah.
But
I
the
think we're there,
point of
buddy.
AI, it's meant to suck up everything. They are fighting ferociously to keep boundaries from being erected in terms of what AI is allowed to devour. And to some degree, it's again a little bit of a silver lining, because it sucks for copyright protection. It
Mhm.
sucks for creators,
Mhm.
because all our work is being consumed and like regurgitated and repurposed for other things. But on the other hand, nothing is being left behind. It's like, if you want an answer to this question, we want our AI to be everywhere, because that
Mm.
makes it the better AI. So again, the future, this will be tweaked. We'll see what happens.
We'll
I'm
circle
not
back.
saying this is the way it will be. Right, exactly. But right now it's better than an algorithm, because the algorithm is like, it is removing information from you
Mm.
and only feeding you
That's
things that
true.
it's decided you're
That's true.
interested in. And the AI has no compunction to just dump information on you from whatever corner it finds it in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you. But it'll be interesting. So,
Oh, but on that point, the wine. I got to
yes,
get the
the
wine
wine.
thoughts out here. That's the point of this podcast. So, this first act, I hadn't. We never really talked about whether we'd seen this movie before.
Mm.
This viewing. Dallas, had you seen this movie before this time?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'd seen Mississippi Burning before. It's again, black families. We've grow up watching all of
Yep.
this. We grow up having really intense, or listening to, as children, listening to the adults in our lives
Hmm.
have really intense conversations about this, and it
Right.
often isn't just sort of a tertiary kind of thing. What happens when a family like my family would watch this film, it engages something real. It engages the memory of a
Right.
lynching down the street. It engages the
Right.
memory of the
Right.
fear. It engages the memory
Right.
of getting the newspaper that morning in 1964, and then
Right.
everyone calling all of their family and relatives to make sure everyone's accounted for. It engages the
Right.
memories of all those horrible things that happened daily in real life in small towns that the federal government, even with its massive sort of infrastructure, could not or would not protect black individuals, black families from. Yeah, I definitely was familiar with this film. And I think you and I had this discussion once before. A lot of second or third viewings of, as an adult, of films you saw as a child, particularly with parents, um, because I had a very vocal family. I would walk away with very acute opinions of films that weren't necessarily my own. That was usually just sitting at the knee of
Right.
my grandmother or father or mother, and hearing their really visceral sort of reactions. And as a child, that kind of colors becomes the baseline for your opinion of things. So
Right.
on this viewing, and I've seen it a few times since I was a child, but on this viewing, I definitely approached it more from just the sort of filmmaking perspective, right? The literary perspective,
Okay.
the sort of. So my emotions aren't necessarily as engaged, enraged, or at all by the imagery or the subject matter. But yeah,
Okay.
that's my history. How about you?
Okay. So what? So actually, jump from there into your wine thoughts, because it's just too perfect of a segue. Then I'll do mine.
Yeah. With in America, land is very important in America to Americans in general, right? The whole sort of thesis of America is land, right? It's like, yeah, we got to go over there. There's free land. We got to get some land, and then we stole it, and blah blah blah. Then we
Right.
brought people over here to kind of, work it for us and build an empire, blah blah blah. So land is very important. It's even more important, I think, in African American culture because it was denied for so long. even though Black Americans were the sort of magicians of land. They were the sort of the stewards of land. All the things that involved land in this country. Um, uh, there were usually African Americans who were doing the work, and so African Americans, even though they were denied a connection to the land, understood the land better than anyone else. And so when the idea of freedom and emancipation came along, their minds, their bodies, their souls, their spirits, their intentions were set on owning a piece of land because it was sustenance, it was survival, it was safety. Um, and through the years, that being denied is still a big issue in America. It's still a vein that runs through Black families. And with deed theft now happening in the news with African Americans and Black families all throughout the Northeast and the US and the South, land is still very important. And so there is this interesting connection to land. And so when I watch films like this, specifically this film, I'm interested in the land because, uh, the land holds all the secrets. It holds all the lies. It holds all the omissions, and that is very clear and real in this film. As spoiler alert: the bodies are found, of course, buried 15 feet deep. So preparing, I decided to use land as my sort of entry point, which is a first for this little venture we got going on here. And Mississippi has
Mhm.
quite a bit of limestone beneath it, and yeah, start
Okay.
thinking about like the terroir of like limestone and what it adds to wine, or what it gets from the limestone. And it's generally, you can find limestone wines will have a higher acidity sometimes, not all times, but a higher acidity.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily the acidity that I was after for this film, because it is a very acidic kind of environment. Um, and the film is bloody. It is acidic. It is all those things. It's dark, and so I'm definitely leaning towards red at this point. Something maybe that sort of is native to a limestone kind of region. Um,
Mhm.
and that's where I was at that point. Yeah. How about you?
All right. Cool. I think so. For me, I had never seen this film before. This
Mm,
viewing, I knew of it. Uh, it hadn't, to my understanding, it didn't have the best reputation
mm-hmm.
as a film, which is one of the reasons I'd avoided it until now. I just heard it wasn't historically particularly accurate. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, I think The White Savior, like I'd forgotten what the critique was, but I knew there were some heavy critiques
Yeah.
in terms of how they covered this story, right? And
Yeah.
we'll get there in Act 2 and 3 and whatnot. But
Mm-hmm.
and so that had kind of kept me at arm's length, where I was always curious. It's Gene Hackman, it's Willem Dafoe. I knew obviously it was about. It's called Mississippi Burning. It's about the Ku Klux Klan
Mm,
in Mississippi,
mm-hmm.
and these were two FBI agents that went down there. That was all I knew. So, but I'd always been curious, so I was happy to watch it. And this first act, going into it, I'd already mentioned the water fountain, perfect setup where you're just like, ooh, yeah, okay, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
That is what this is going to be about. Here we go. Um, and then this first act was so much about tension
Mm,
to me,
okay.
where it was all the tension between the locals, between the white side and the black side. Like, you go into that diner, motherfucker, the tension, like with a knife. I
Yeah.
mean, just whew. And even the local law enforcement with the FBI agents that come in, like everything is tension between one group, one party to the next, and sizing each other up and trying to figure each other out. In fact, everyone wants to, even Gene Hackman's character, there's a great scene where he goes into the sheriff's office and Brad Dourif is the deputy,
Yeah.
tries to, like, he just brushes Willem Dafoe off, and Willem Dafoe's like, well, I'll wait, and goes sits in a chair, and Gene Hackman's like, okay,
Yeah.
look, you little fucking shit.
Yeah.
It's like, you got 10 seconds to get the sheriff out here. I'm gonna go kick that fucking door down. And the tension between every single party and the violence that was like ready to erupt at
Yeah.
any given moment.
Yeah.
So in my head with wine, there's something called tension in
Mhm.
wine that we talk about. And a wine with tension is two parts of a wine that are always at kind of a tug of war with each other. So you think about acidity versus sweetness. You
Mhm.
think about, if something's going the alcohol level versus the drinkability, the lightness of it. You don't
Mhm.
want it to be too heavy. You think about the tension between bitterness and fruitiness.
Mhm.
These are all things that are going to be there's going to be a tension in a wine. And a good wine of tension is a wine where it never trips in too far into one or the other, right? You
Right.
notice all of it. And at any given second, you're like, ooh, there's some bitterness. Ooh, but it's fruity.
It's
Ooh,
a
but
little
it's sweet. Oh, but
dance.
it's got some acidity, some lightness. Right. It's a little dance. And nothing ever falls. So it's the tension remains all the way
Mm.
through and never just no, it never punches the other one out where it fumbles onto the ground, right? And so that tension, if you think about it as the tug of war, is like
Yeah.
like no side ever gives up and
Right.
like falls, and so the tension always remains. So I was thinking a wine of tension at this
Okay.
point. I wasn't 100% certain where I was going to go with that, but that was my thinking.
All right. Yeah, I see that 100%. There is just a ton of tension in this moment. And I will say, they do a damn fine job of allowing you just to sit in the tension, which a lot of writers and filmmakers
Hmm.
don't, I think. So, yeah. Yeah, I see that. I see that. All right. Act 2. In the aftermath of the court case, the preacher's son is beaten and his father hanged, which forces the FBI to realize that local authorities are not just antagonistic and set in their ways, but in fact may have more to do with this case than previously assumed. Ward and Anderson realize the missing men are almost certainly dead, and that local law enforcement and civic leaders are protecting the killers. The investigation shifts from searching for victims to exposing a citywide, potentially statewide conspiracy. The stakes escalate from a missing persons case to a battle against institutionalized racial terror. Anderson, drawing on his Southern background, begins to behave differently as he builds a quiet rapport with Mrs. Pell, Deputy Pell's abused wife. In a tearful confession, she reveals that her husband, Deputy Pell, and fellow Klansmen murdered the 3 civil rights workers and buried the bodies in an earthen dam. A search uncovers the bodies, confirming murder as the nation now sees what Jessup County tried to hide. When Pell discovers his wife's betrayal, he arrives with other Klansmen and savagely beats her. Agents Ward and Anderson's philosophical differences begin to inflame as idealist Ward insists on lawful federal procedure, and the Southern Anderson argues that the system itself is corrupt and must be manipulated. Their argument escalates into a physical fight, but Ward ultimately admits that his by the book methods have failed and gives Anderson latitude to proceed with his off the book tactics. All right, wine. Okay. So yeah, at this point I'm thinking definitely a red. I know it's a little cliche, but you only got a couple of choices, right? Uh so I'm thinking definitely red. Um I I wanted something that was peppery, so I started thinking, of course, like a Pinot Noir, Noir.
Mhm.
I have a friend who says Noir. It's very nasally, um, but I'm thinking like Pinot, something peppery. And then I started thinking about it was. I've been thinking about this the entire time. If you were with me or not, I cannot remember if you were with me or
Okay.
not. But we went to a tasting, or we were at a tasting, and it was a Pinot. It was the Chenin Noir's parent grape, or it was the Pinot Ennui was the actual name.
Pinot Ennui. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I
Hmm.
started thinking about that because I remember it being a bit not hard to enjoy, but it required a lot to kind of
It was
just
at the weird wine thing. This just like 2 weekends ago, my bud.
Oh no, I'm not talking about that. But yeah, you're right. We did have one there. Oh shit. So that's two. That's two. Never mind.
We did have, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Oh
it was
shit.
hard to drink.
Damn it. I totally forgot about that. That was there too. All right. So that's the second one. I wasn't even
Okay,
referencing
well,
that one.
there you
Um,
go. There you go.
but it was yeah, hard to drink. We'll say hard to drink, but I don't mean that negatively. It just means, as Dave was saying about
I
tension,
mean that negatively.
as Dave was saying about tension, it's kind of this little dance, this little back and forth, this little tug of war. And for me, that's what this wine was. That's what this film was. I get all the issues with the film. I understand why civil rights activists had an issue with it. I understand why there were some people who adored it and the filmmakers didn't understand, the pushback. So I get the tug of war. And as far as the sort of notes, it struck me as peppery, both white pepper and black pepper, white pepper being a bit more fruity than black pepper to me. And, that deep sort of red berry, and strawberry-ish, maybe even pomegranate. Um, and
Hmm.
so that's where I was here. Um and
Okay.
for all the reasons we stated before. So how about you?
For me, all that tension had now just spilled into violence. Like no one was
Mm,
keeping the tension.
yeah,
There was no tension being kept. Now it was like punch, 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 burn,
yeah.
burn, burn, kill, kill, kill. I was like, okay, so a wine of violence. Fuck the tension. I think it
A
has to
wine of
be.
violence, I like it.
Yes, it has to be a wine that hurts, that is brutal, that is like it attacks, right?
Mm,
It has an attack. It's just a
hmm.
lot to take in. You may not even like it, but you might be in the mood for it. Just
Yeah.
like a nice, violent, disturbing, depressing movie about history.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that
that was my
tracks.
thinking.
That tracks. That's pretty much this. So
Yep.
cool. All right. Act 3. Granted the freedom to call the shots by Ward, Anderson devises a new strategy. He intends to charge the suspects with federal civil rights violations, since murder prosecutions would fail at the state level. And that plan is to use psychological warfare to fracture the Klan's solidarity. And with that plan underway, their first move: kidnap Mayor Tillman and stage a terrifying interrogation involving a mysterious black agent posing as a powerful, omnipresent threat. Mayor Tillman cracks under the threat and reveals the details of the conspiracy. Next, the agents attempt to lure Klan members into a gathering to prove they are KKK, but the suspects grow suspicious and leave. The conspiracy still holds. Step 3 to their plan: the FBI then shifts its focus to the weak link in the Klan's armor, a man named Lester Cowens. They orchestrate an elaborate psychological ploy around Cowens with a staged fight between Anderson and Pell, followed by a shotgun blast through Cowens' window and a burning cross on his lawn. Finally, with the appearance of a hooded Klansman, actually FBI agents in disguise, attempting to hang him. Believing his own people have betrayed him, Cowens breaks. He confesses and names the conspirators. The wall of silence collapses. Armed with Cowens' testimony and corroborating evidence, the FBI indicts multiple Klansmen on federal civil rights charges. The outcomes? First, several conspirators are convicted and sentenced to 3 to 10 years. Sheriff Stuckey is acquitted. The full moral corruption of the town is exposed nationally. Justice is partial, incomplete, but real. And following the verdict, Mayor Tillman is found hanged, having committed suicide. Ward then tells Agent Byrd that Tillman was guilty simply for the act of being a witness. Mrs. Pell returns to her vandalized home, and despite the destruction, she continues to rebuild and live free from her husband's control as the emotional tension between Anderson comes to its natural conclusion. And for our final image, Ward and Anderson visit an integrated church congregation gathered at an African American cemetery where the desecrated gravestones of one of the murdered activists reads, "Not forgotten. The case is closed, but the struggle for civil rights continues." Yeah.
And continues and continues
And continues, my
and
guy.
continues.
And fucking continues. And honestly, at this point, what do you say? I mean, you just brace and hold on, right?
Mhm.
And drink wine. Anyway, take us home with
And
some wine
show.
thoughts. And that's right. That's true. That's true. All right. What wine wise? What you thinking, Dave?
So this changed all my thinking
Oh,
up to this point. I didn't want a wine of tension or violence at this point at all. I wanted a wine of comfort at this point. This is probably my delicate white sensibilities coming through, but I was like, no, I want something hopeful. I want something, and even with the pseudo Hollywoodish ending that
Yeah.
they give this, which is not entirely untrue to real life, like how they did go after them with the civil rights charges.
yeah.
The sheriff was acquitted, and everyone else got a little bit of something except that preacher.
Yeah.
So it was fairly true, but at the same time, like I didn't know how much to trust the Hollywood ending either. So I'm like, this feels a little hopeful. I was kind of shocked with like the 10 years, and I'm like, for killing people? I'm like, what is happening? So because now it's like you have drugs and you get life,
That's right.
and I'm like, Jesus, okay.
Well,
So at this point, I really wanted to look for something that was easier drinking. So not a wine of, like the opposite of a wine of violence, where it was
okay.
like, all right, I need something to counteract what this movie is for me in some way, shape, or form. Like, give me a story that's going to be a little more hopeful than what the story of this movie is. Give me a wine that's easier to drink than any wine that would actually embody this movie would be. So I knew of this wine. I went down to West Adams Wine Shop here in LA. And West Adams Wine Shop it's near where I work, the blending lab, so it's easy for me to get to, but it's a wine shop that promotes and predominantly focuses on winemakers of color. That's like their whole shtick.
right.
That's their whole shebang. Not their whole shebang, but it's like it is their core focus. So I was like, let's go there because I definitely want to find something of that nature. And what I found, I'm going to share my screen here because this is going to be the easiest way to do this. So I got their 20. This is the Bodkin Winery. This is African American owned winery by Chris Christensen, and this is their 2022 light skinned Zinfandel that they make.
I'm familiar.
And Zinfandel is a very easy drinking grape, generally speaking. This is a lighter version of that. It's 36 hours on the skin, so that's not very long. It actually gets pretty dark for only 36 hours because Zinfandel is just such a bloody dark grape. Tends to get very fruity, makes very dense wine. Very easy drinking, though, nevertheless, because it's usually kind of fruity and sweet. You have to really know what you're doing with it to make it super complex. It tends to stay fairly simple. Now, the thing that I liked about his story, this is where my delicate white sensibilities come in, and I'm like, give me a more hopeful story. So Chris Christensen comes from a mixed race family himself, and so you can see this is his family here on the bottle, where at the very top you see his own parents with a black father, white mother, then him and his two siblings in the middle there. And then he himself married mixed race. So he married a white person, and then they have their kids. So it's his wife and his kids at the bottom. And they're all embodied in this light-skinned rosé, that's the hopeful story of like the coming together of the two sides. And like, we're marrying each other, we're living amongst each other. Usually when that happens, you probably understand each other so much better than if you just stay separate. But in any event, I liked the story of this. It was a comforting wine also in terms of flavor and in terms of its properties. Like, it wasn't too heavy bodied. It wasn't too big and bold. It stayed light, but still flavorful, which this movie, to be fair, like you're not going to want anything too ridiculously light because that's just not going to match how much is going on in this movie
That's true.
and the heavy themes. But at the same time, I needed a little bit of something to counteract that. So this light-skinned Zinfandel from the Bodkin Winery,
Yeah,
that was my jam.
I like it. I like it. I like it. All right. I stayed where I was. I stayed with that Pinot Doni, uh, which is it's this weirdly there is this note of smoked meat and even raw meat, and it's a little bloody, and it's tangy and tart, and um, it seems like it has all the things, which I think is part of its problem why people don't like it so much. It seems like it has all the things, um, and
Except the nice things.
it's got the nice things. It's got a few nice things. It's got a little cherry in there, a little white pepper. Um, but it is very peppery for me, distinctively so. It is bloody.
Mm-hmm.
It is not easy to drink, as we said, but I think always worth the taste. Always worth the taste. This wine was. I had 2 glasses of it, and the entire time, half my brain was focused on understanding the wine, which again is with many wines you can
Mm-hmm.
kind of immediately just your palate just determines what's what, and it kind of moves on and enjoys the experience. And for this
Mm-hmm.
one, I was just sort
Mm-hmm.
of like the entire time, half my brain or quarter of my brain's just sort of like, oh, there's wine going on here. So it was a curious little matchup,
Yeah.
curious little pair. I think it mirrors the film
Yep.
in many ways. Um, and it is the Domaine de Bolivier Rouge Gorge, Pinot de Pinot Doni. It is, by the way, the Pinot Doni is an ancient red grape variety from the Loire Valley in France, known for its light body and peppery sort of finish or notes. It is often compared to Pinot Noir, which is what I mentioned earlier. I
From the same family.
From the
Yeah.
same family, in fact. Yeah. I I enjoy it because it doesn't necessarily hit all the right notes, and the same goes for this film.
Mm-hmm. And to your point of you're not sure, you don't always want to. Oh, what did you just say earlier? Like you don't always want to drink it, but always worth the taste. Something
Yeah.
like that. Like this
Yeah. Yeah.
movie, you don't always want to watch it, but always worth the taste.
Yeah. 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 It is. That's exactly how I would describe this film. I would say you should probably watch it once, because the film does this thing. It's almost a film done in postcards. That was a note I made while I was watching it. From that first
Hmm.
image, it's a postcard image. The second image, it's a postcard image, and it's a film done in archetypes, of course. And I think they're done so broadly because it is attempting to retell a story that is mostly true, but it does feel like a film done in sort of postcards and really specific imagery, and which again isn't bad storytelling by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just noticeable for me. And I think because of that, it is necessary viewing because it does give you the imagery, and it's stark and it's dark, and it's, even though it's through the guise of sort of whiteness, for those who are unfamiliar with this history or who are disconnected from this history, I would say this is probably a good film to watch as sort of an introduction, um, to the reality
Hmm.
of the civil rights struggle. So, heavy film, heavy film,
Mm-hmm.
heavy reality, in fact.
Neither of us really picked heavy wines, though, which is interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I was definitely pairing
Yeah,
more so with
we
the.
did. No, I was just gonna say neither of us really wanted something to match that part of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, because Pinot Dionwy is how to describe. It's still light in body.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
still relatively kind of like a Pinot Noir. It's very much in that. But then the flavor profile is a little
all over the
taster
place.
shots at that point.
It is all over the
Yes.
place.
All right, folks. Well, to close this out here, because it's time. This has been a nice, long, meaty, juicy episode. But go watch Mississippi Burning. Look up other civil rights movies that have come in its wake that probably have more refined POVs. So, start here, but then also go beyond the 80s, because the 80s is not
Absolutely.
known for being the most historically accurate for anything that we pumped out. But take a look at this one. It is a movie.
It's a movie. It's intense.
And on
Watch
that
it.
note,
Yeah, drink some wine.
have some alcohol. Yeah, have some wine. I don't know, Dallas doesn't usually look at the screen, but I've actually literally been drinking from the bottle as we've been recording today. So,
That's hilarious. No, I did
it's
not
that-
see that.
It's that kind of movie. Our listeners, anyone watching this on YouTube will have been seeing that as we had been recording. But on that note, folks, we're just gonna cut out here, but we will be back in 1 week with another wine and entertainment pairing for your entertainment. Ciao for now, and next week something to close out February. We're going actually back into the romance world a little bit.
Right.
I was telling Dallas we actually weirdly chose, outside of Mississippi Burning, which has a tiny bit of a romance, that's a little peppered in through, but not really. It's definitely not a romantic movie. Whereas our other three movies, Game Night, and then Miracle Mile, and then the one we're going to do next week also counts as a romance.
Right.
So join us, and for one last romance for February, and we'll check you then.
That's right. Later, guys. But Director Parker came aboard and began significant rewrites.
You gotta love those moments. I have so many of those moments where I'm like, wow. It's like I have my F's sometimes to this, and then you got the wee whites, and you're like, what is happening? Sometimes doing this podcast, I feel like I'm already getting like Alzheimer's, or like I'm becoming more decrepit. Like I'm noticing how decrepit I'm getting as time goes on. So I'm just like
I used
breaking
to do this
down.
for a living. I was so good. I was a one-take wonder.
You got to do it for a living to stay that good at it. That's how it
true.
works, buddy.
It's true. All right. Cut all that out. Do not use that. Anyway, I know you will. It should be noted that the above history lesson is a necessary one for today's film. Oh, was that where the cut is?
No. Sorry. Go ahead. No.
Okay.
I reacted to something in real space over here with me. Sorry. Go ahead.
Hilarious. All right. That's so. I don't know why that makes me laugh so much, but yeah. All right.
Because we're so in tune with this, and then it's like, I know I have to remind myself. No, I can't just react to like real life. I'm recording.
I know, right? It must really suck to be like a newscaster on live TV all day.
All day. I'm sure you get used to it, right? I mean, that's what you get trained to do. Is the mask is on at all times, and it's like it's rare that it breaks.
That's so funny. Oh, okay, all right. I don't know why that's so funny to me. Okay.